It all started, innocently enough, with a flash. Not the dramatic, life-altering kind of flash, but a cheap, digital flash, the sort you get from a 5-year-old smartphone camera, and it was aimed, methodically, directly at my house. I was at my desk, a slab of pine propped on filing cabinets, trying to convince a client via email that cerulean dream was the perfect color for their Kraft dog biscuit logo. The afternoon sun was streaming through the window when I saw it, the familiar, predatory glint of light off a lens. My eyes snapped up. There, on the perfectly manicured public sidewalk, stood my neighbor, Elaine Vance. She was mid-50s, encased in beige athleisure wear, and her hair was a helmet of blonde precision. She was holding her iPhone up shamelessly, taking a picture of my house. Now, this wasn't the first time. Elaine's amateur photography had been a low-grade feature of my life for 3 months. Usually, it was a quick snap, but this was a full-blown photo shoot. She took a wide shot, walked a few feet, and took another. She zoomed in, brow furrowed, presumably on my azalea bushes. Was a petal threatening to fall on an unapproved patch of lawn? My first instinct was to become one with my office chair. I slid down, my head dipping below the window's sill, breathing in the faint scent of stale coffee and self-doubt. When I peeked over the edge, she was still there, now scribbling fiercely in a small, spiral-bound notebook. It was the look of a food critic who just found a rat in their soup. What could she possibly be documenting? My house was a monument to architectural neutrality, beige siding, gray roof. I'd bought it specifically because it was the physical embodiment of a shrug, a place to exist quietly. I watched her put her notebook away, gave my house one last withering glare, and marched off. I was left with a lingering sense of violation and profound confusion. It was just Elaine documenting my beige existence like she was shooting for Architectural Digest, Disappointments Edition. A few days later, I cornered her by the recycling bin. "Hey, Elaine," I said, trying to sound unthreatening. "I couldn't help but notice you've been taking a lot of pictures of my house lately. Everything okay?" "Mark," she said, her tone flat, like a scientist addressing a lab rat. "I'm simply documenting potential violations for the homeowners association. Your lawn, for example, is 1/4 of an inch above the regulated height in the bylaws. Section 8, paragraph C. You carry a ruler?" I asked, the question popping out before I could stop it. "One must be thorough," she sniffed. "And your front door is a subject of significant concern. The color is unapproved. It's far too vibrant." Vibrant. I had chosen a tasteful, muted navy blue called Gentleman's Evening. "It's navy blue, Elaine," I said, my voice tightening. "The Millers down the street have a plastic flamingo that's been missing a leg since 2018. My door is the problem. The Miller flamingo is grandfathered in," she said with finality. "Your door is a new and, frankly, unwelcome development. I'm keeping a record." With that, she continued her march. The other shoe dropped the following week. It arrived in a crisp, cream-colored envelope with the HOA logo. It was a formal complaint, citing a grievance filed by a concerned neighbor. My crime, my unapproved chromatic alteration to the primary entryway, was disrupting the community's aesthetic harmony. And stapled to the bottom was a grainy, horribly pixelated photograph of my front door, Elaine's evidence. I sank onto my porch steps. Aesthetic harmony. My navy blue door wasn't a disruption. It was a tiny, desperate cry for help in a sea of suburban sameness. This wasn't about the door. It was a power trip. This was a declaration of war, a very, very beige war. Fine, I thought, staring at the perfectly bland facade of Elaine's house across the street. If she wanted something to document, I'd give her something to document. For the first week, I tried rational strategies. I emailed the HOA, attaching a picture of my door next to George Washington's front door. Founding fathers love non-beige doors. The curt response directed me back to the 3 approved color swatches: oatmeal, sandstone, and taupe. Reason failed. I tried petty avoidance. I started turning on my sprinklers every day between 4 and 5 p.m., right when she started her patrol, giving her a light misting. I tried planting a bush in her line of sight, but she just moved her operations. My last-ditch effort was to be provocative. The next time she raised her phone, I threw open my front door, struck a pose, and yelled, "Get my good side, Elaine." She didn't flinch. She just lowered her phone, made a note, probably subject exhibiting signs of mental instability, and walked away. I was at my wit's end. I vented to my friend, Leo, who lived downtown, free from the tyranny of HOAs. She was taking pictures of my gutters yesterday, Leo. What possible violation could my gutters be committing? Loitering. So, fight petty with petty, he suggested. Get one of those gnomes flipping the bird. Too subtle, I sighed. The bar for acceptable lawn weirdness is surprisingly high. I need something bigger, something, I don't know, reflective. The word just hung there. Reflective. Later that night, trapped in a loop of beige paint swatches, I fell into a deep internet rabbit hole. I Googled how to legally annoy your neighbor, then unusual home exteriors. The algorithm, sensing my desperation, served me a video titled Craziest State Fair Attractions. I watched people get flung around on rides, and then I saw it. A family standing in front of a building called the Funhouse. They were pointing and laughing at their own images in the mirrors, stretched, squashed, distorted. My brain suddenly went silent. A full-blown disco ball started spinning in my head. What if every time Elaine tried to document a violation, the only thing her camera captured was a monstrous, 10-foot-tall version of her own head with a pin-sized body? What if her evidence looked like it was taken on another planet? It was perfect. It wasn't explicitly forbidden in the bylaws. I checked. There were rules about sheds, fences, and satellite dishes. There was nothing about non-traditional reflective surfaces. It was, in its own bizarre way, interactive art. Art that would drive my personal tormentor completely insane. The next morning, buzzing with purpose, I started calling contractors. They all hung up. I was down to my last Google result, Gus's gutter and glass. A gravelly voice answered. Hi, I began. I have a slightly unusual project. I'm looking for, Funhouse mirrors, the kind that make you look all wacky. There was a long, heavy pause. Kid, Gus finally grumbled. What did your neighbor do to you? I told him everything. The camera, the lawn, the HOA, the aesthetic harmony of my navy blue door. I expected him to laugh. Instead, there was a dry, hacking cackle. All right, Gus said, amusement evident in his voice. I'll come take a look. This is the dumbest, most beautiful thing I've ever heard. My consultation fee is $50. I had found my co-conspirator. Operation Distorted Reality was a go. Gus arrived 2 days later, a burly man with a magnificent gray beard, in a truck that looked like it had survived the Cretaceous period. He squinted at my porch, stroking his beard while I nervously presented my hand-drawn blueprints. The main line of sight is right there, I explained. The main panel should be the makes you all squiggly and wavy one, for maximum visual chaos. The spaghetti effect. Good choice. Classic, Gus nodded. Then for the panels under the windows, convex. The one that gives you a giant head and a tiny body. Like a bobblehead. Aggressive. I like it. And finally, I said, moving next to my door. The concave one. The one that stretches you tall and impossibly thin. I want her to have to look at a grotesque Funhouse version of herself every time she tries to document my door. Gus stared at the drawing. I'm going to have to custom order these panels, he said. It's not going to be cheap. You sure you want to spend $1,000, maybe more, just to mess with the crazy lady? I looked across the street at Elaine's house. I thought about the HOA letter and her condescending tone. Gus, I said with more conviction than I'd felt in months. Consider it an investment in my mental health and performance art. He slapped the drawing against his thigh. All right, performance artist, let's do it. The following week was the longest of my life. I watched Elaine's patrols with a newfound sense of anticipation. Enjoy the before shots, Elaine. The after is going to be a masterpiece. Finally, Gus called. Got the clown mirrors. Be there tomorrow morning at 9. The installation was a public spectacle. Gus and his young apprentice, Kyle, began carrying the large, heavy panels. Neighbors paused their gardening and power walking to stare. Mr. Vance, the HOA president, stopped dead in his tracks. What are these for again? Kyle asked me, sweat beading on his forehead. Aesthetic harmony, I said with a completely straight face. He blinked, confusion deepening into existential bewilderment. The process took hours, full of drilling, clanking, and Gus's gruff commands. Finally, he wiped his hands on a rag. That's it. She's all yours. I stepped back. It was glorious. My entire porch, once boring, was now a shimmering, warping, kaleidoscopic wonderland. It looked like a Salvador Dali painting had exploded on the front of my house. Gus gave the panels a final thump. "Call me if you need anything," he said, a genuine twinkle in his eye. "And you damn well better send me a video of her face when she sees it. I'm waiving the consultation fee for that." I set up my phone on the windowsill and hit record. At 4:15 p.m., right on schedule, she appeared. She approached, her eyes scanning my house, and then she stopped dead in her tracks. Her prime firing position was now the epicenter of a physics-defying light show. She raised her phone, the conditioned reflex of a seasoned documentarian, but her smug expression melted away, replaced by pure, unadulterated confusion. She took a tentative step closer, right into the sweet spot of the main wavy mirror. She saw her reflection. Her mouth fell open. Her body twisted and flowed like cheap taffy. She looked like a human-shaped lava lamp. She stumbled back, right into the view of the convex mirror. She was instantly transformed into a caricature, a bobblehead doll with a forehead the size of a Thanksgiving turkey. She spun to her left, trying a different angle, and was met with the concave mirror. Now she was a 10-foot-tall piece of human spaghetti, stretched and distorted into an unervingly thin wraith. It was better than I could have ever imagined. She lowered her phone, her weapon rendered completely useless. The photos she was taking wouldn't be evidence. They'd be abstract art. She stared at my porch, her face a Picasso painting of rage and bewilderment. Then, with a final, guttural shriek of pure impotent fury that echoed down the quiet suburban street, she spun on her heel and power-walked back to her house, defeated. I stopped the recording, my hands shaking with adrenaline and laughter. I immediately edited the clip down to the best 30 seconds and sent it to Gus. His reply came back less than a minute later, rolling on the floor laughing. Victory had never tasted so sweet. The sweet, shimmering glow of victory lasted for 48 hours. Then, on the third day, a police car rolled silently to a stop in front of my house. My heart plummeted. 2 officers got out. The senior one, Officer Miller, had an air of profound weariness. The younger one, Officer Davis, had a crisp uniform and an eager, by-the-book expression. "Good afternoon, sir," Miller said. "We received a call about this." "The complainant," Davis chimed in, flipping open a notepad, "alleges that your aggressive and disorienting reflective surfaces constitute a visual hazard and have caused her significant emotional distress." I had to physically bite my cheek to keep from laughing. Significant emotional distress because she looks funny in them. Miller's mustache twitched. "Miss Vance also claims the glare could potentially blind passing motorists." "I haven't noticed any car crashes," I offered, "but I'll keep an eye out." Miller shot Davis a look. "Davis," he said, "it's a mirror. The sun reflects off of windows, chrome bumpers, bald heads. We can't write tickets for the sun." He turned back to me. "Son, between you and me, we get a call from Miss Vance about once a week. Last Tuesday, it was about the Ferguson's wind chimes being, and I quote, excessively melodic. They knew she was crazy. Is there any actual law that says a man can't put up some weird mirrors on his own property?" Miller asked. "Not that I'm aware of, officer." I read the HOA bylaws cover to cover. They're silent on the issue of carnival-themed decor. "There you have it," Miller nodded. "Nothing to see here, kid. We've got an actual cat in a tree over on Elm Street. A real one this time." Round 2 went to Mark. If the police wouldn't help her, Elaine brought in the big guns. The next evening, Mr. Vance, the HOA president, pulled up. He handed me a cream-colored envelope. "The board received an emergency grievance," he said. "From several, actually. Elaine has been canvassing. You're expected to attend an emergency meeting this Saturday." I tore open the envelope. It was a formal cease and desist order. It cited structures not in keeping with the neighborhood's established character, and my personal favorite, installations with the potential for causing public alarm or mockery. I was being summoned to defend my porch. The final blow came when my friend Leo sent me a link to the Oakwood Estates Community Watch Facebook group. The top post was from Elaine Vance, a hysterical, caps-lock-ridden screed about my monstrous porch of horrors. Attached were the pictures, her evidence. They were glorious, blurry, and looked less like a housing violation and more like stills from a low-budget horror movie. I scrolled down to the comments. I expected a tidal wave of support for Elaine, but the tide had turned. Dave S. "Frankly, Elaine, it's hilarious. You've been photographing that poor guy's house for months. What did you expect? Jenna R. My kids love it. We walk by every day just to see it. Mrs. Miller, the lemon bar lady. I think it's whimsical. It reminds me of the fairgrounds. It adds character. Elaine, dear, perhaps you need a hobby that doesn't involve your phone's camera. That comment had over 50 likes. Elaine had overplayed her hand. I wasn't fighting alone. The HOA meeting on Saturday was packed. Elaine, clutching a massive binder labeled exhibits, had a PowerPoint presentation. For 10 minutes, she delivered a dramatic monologue about the sanctity of the neighborhood, clicking through slides that were, of course, the distorted photos of her own reflection. This, she declared, is the chaos he has brought to our peaceful community. It is a menace, a blight. It lowers the tone. Mr. Vance looked at me. Mr. Maxwell, your response. I took a deep breath. Good evening, everyone. I'm Mark Maxwell, and yes, I have Funhouse mirrors on my porch, and I'm not going to apologize for it. I explained that my house was being treated like a personal photography subject for months. My porch? It's unusual, but it's not a violation of our bylaws. Section 12, which governs exterior modifications, forbids permanent structures. As you can see from this notarized statement from the installer, these are decorative panels affixed with brackets. They can be removed in under an hour. They are not permanent. They don't make noise. They don't emit smells. They don't block any public access. They just reflect. And it seems the only person they truly bother is the person who insists on standing on the sidewalk and taking pictures of my house day after day. In fact, you could argue they're an effective and artistic privacy feature. Then, Mrs. Miller stood up. He's right, she said. Elaine, dear, we all know you're a bit zealous. That boy's porch is harmless. It's fun. My grandchildren love it. That was the turning point. Davis stood up. I'm tired of the beige police, Elaine. Let the guy have his mirrors. The three board members huddled together. Finally, Mr. Vance straightened up. While the installation is unusual, it does not appear to violate the letter of any specific bylaw regarding permanent structures. The motion to compel Mr. Maxwell to remove the panels fails by a vote of 2-1. A wave of quiet applause rippled through the room. Elaine sat frozen in her chair, her face ashen. The beige war was over. In the week following the showdown, a new kind of quiet settled over Oakwood Estates, a more relaxed, peaceful version. I saw Elaine a few days later. She crossed to the other side of the street, giving my house a wide berth. Her phone stayed firmly in her pocket. She never took another picture of my house again. It was a full-blown surrender treaty. I'd originally planned to take the mirrors down, but I'd grown to love them. They had become a neighborhood landmark. I'd see kids stop to make funny faces. Mrs. Miller waved at me every morning. My act of petty revenge had accidentally become a source of communal joy. I called Gus. Hey Gus, we won. I'm going to keep them up. Attaboy, he chuckled. Never underestimate the power of a well-placed clown mirror. The story ends here with me sitting on my front steps drinking my morning coffee. The sun hits the wavy mirror just right, sending a cascade of shimmering, distorted light dancing across my living room ceiling. They say good fences make good neighbors, but I've learned that sometimes when fences aren't enough, you have to get a little more creative. Sometimes the best defense isn't a fence at all. It's a funhouse mirror and a healthy, life-affirming appreciation for the absurd. Now, tell me in the comments, what's the most absurd HOA violation you or your neighbor has ever been cited for? Did you fight back? And if so, how? Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more stories about winning the suburban war of wills.